like to call this meeting to order. My name is Jeff Gow, and I'm your committee chair representing the great city of Dunedin. We can go around the room, starting at my left, and introduce the other PSTA board members on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Saraki, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar.
Congratulations. Vince Cox, Pinellas County.
Josh Schulman, St. Petersburg.
Richard Bennett, I represent the Big C.
And Richard, what is the Big C?
It's
For the public.
a group of all the mayors of the small towns in Pinellas County,
Along the beach.
along the beach, right?
Very cool, very good. You bet. Just
Good morning,
for the
Brad
public,
Miller, CEO of PSTA.
The big guy. Oh, I'm sorry. Usually Brad is last, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
let me
that's,
laugh.
I'm used to it, it's good. Patty Reed, Vice Mayor, Pinellas Park.
All right, thank you. All right, is there,
Oh,
You-
you're
you
fine.
sit up there.
No, I'm not sitting over there, he's coughing.
Oh.
I'm not being mad, but I'm not sitting over there.
Hell with it. I haven't coughed
So
yet.
I'm like your,
I probably
If
won't
you
cough.
can, you can sit over there and I'll move my purse, but I'm not sitting
Okay.
down.
You're the canary in the coal mine. Just wait. If you get sick, she's out.
I probably won't cough the whole meeting.
That's good.
And I got a mask on now.
I know.
Hey, they got-
But if
That's
blood
good.
starts coming out of his
I
eyes,
hope
you
you
should.
don't feel that.
if we can all reel in, that would be wonderful. I appreciate that. Oh, my goodness, it's like a Monday, but it's a Wednesday. Is there any public comment? Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of comment now.
There is one now. I have one.
Any public comment? No, there's no public comment, so we'll bring it back to the
I'm
board.
like, I'm gonna move over
We are on action item 3A,
Make a
to
motion to
approve.
approve.
All right, that is the August 16, 2023 minutes. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? And that item passes unanimously. Item 3B, the Vanpool agreement with FDOT. Debbie Leos, our world-famous CFO, will go over the agreement with FDOT.
Well, good morning, Chair Gow and Finance Committee members. The action item I'm going to bringing forward today is for an agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation for PSTA to administer the Vanpool program on their behalf. As you know, or may not know, but TBARTA is currently running the Vanpool program, and they will be dissolving as of March 31st, 2024. The agreement with their contractor is expiring at the end of December. So FDOT had approached PSTA to administer the program on their behalf, a program called Commute Tampa Bay. It is truly a regional program. It covers 6 counties: Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Manatee, Pasco, and Pinellas. Now, legal counsel has asked us to do an agreement with FDOT because we cannot do service outside of Pinellas County. We can go into other counties from here, but for instance, if we have someone in a Vanpool program going from Pasco to Hillsborough, we cannot do it without an agreement. So let's take a look at a little bit about the program. It is really a very good example of a public-private partnership in a very simple format. The vendor provides everything. Provides the vans, the insurance, the maintenance on the vehicles. They market the program, they administer the program. They also provide all support to Vanpool operators. Now, what exactly is a Vanpool? It's where a group of people get together to go to work, and it's usually between 5 and 15 people in a Vanpool. And their general commute is for longer distances, anywhere from about 22 to 53 miles one way. So the program itself on a public-private partnership helps to reduce the cost of people in the Vanpool by providing a subsidy or a discount to them. So currently, under the current contract, we are paying out $450 to reduce the cost of the lease to the person. The program is important not only to the region, but from a fiscal standpoint, this year it has brought 1.4 million of generated dollars to us. And it has only cost $1 million to operate the program. So when there's a difference like that, where it's generating more revenue than what you need, we can use that grant funds for any federal FTA eligible expenditures. Now, what I love about this program, not only is it regional and something we can do on behalf of one of our great funding partners, FDOT, it provides an alternate way to get people around, not only within the counties, but between the counties. Because there are areas in rural areas that it doesn't make sense to run public transportation in a traditional way. This allows an alternative for all of those people. So the action item today is to recommend approval of an agreement with FDOT to allow PSTA to administer this regional van pool program. With that, I'll take any questions. Yes, Commissioner.
So you said we get to spend the additional funds on FTA programs. Are we PSTA, or is it?
We have options, but we as PSTA can use that on additional items.
Okay, and so it doesn't have to be spent like in a particular county or?
No, it does not. Now, as we, in our goal, because you know we're overachievers here, is to increase the van pool program itself. Currently, there's about 200 vans in the van pool program. As we increase the number of vans, that differential between what we're getting today is going to diminish a little bit. But what's wonderful about FTA is it takes about 2 years for them to catch up on things. We'll be setting aside about 2 years' worth of van pool money out of the current TBARTA funds to kind of give us that piggy bank of money to allow the program to catch up. So we're hoping to maybe increase what we provide in the van pool program as an incentive to grow it, because I think it is a great opportunity, is an option for our riders.
Do we have any numbers on how many folks from Pinellas County, either to Pinellas County or from, use the van pool?
There's a much smaller, the majority of them are in Hillsborough because McDill brings in the majority of it. The federal government provides their own subsidy, so essentially it's almost like a free program for anybody in the federal government using it, between the subsidy provided by the grant and the subsidy provided by the federal government.
I think taking it over makes sense, makes a ton of sense, and marketing it to try to grow it as well. I'd be interested to see how many PSTA employees we know live in northern counties and southern counties might be able to take
Yes.
advantage coming in, right? So it's about having a work center that makes it more valuable.
Al's gonna start it, I think.
Okay. I wouldn't mind riding to work without. It all depends on who gets to control the music. Thank you. I'm in favor.
Thank you, Debbie. Debbie, what exactly, staff-wise, does it involve, PSTA staff-wise? What will the staff be doing to oversee?
Great question, and we have a staff member, Gabrielle, who is going to be administering this program on behalf of PSTA. So essentially, the vendor, whoever is selected during the procurement process, is going to be a turnkey operation. So Gabby will be looking at the invoices, reviewing them, doing all the federal reports that are required, which is basically an update on how is the van pool program going. In addition, I think our marketing department will also be sort of looking in and helping out with this a little bit, but truly, whoever the van pool provider is, does it all. And they're incentivized to market it as much as possible because they get money from this as well, from the van pool operators.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
No questions. Mr. Chair, I move approval.
I've got some questions, do you mind?
I do.
Well,
I second.
Does PSTA have any role in the marketing of this, or is it all up to Enterprise?
Enterprise, well, it'll be whatever vendor is selected, but the vendor does all the marketing on this. I think to any extent we could maybe help push it out. Obviously, on our website, we'll be doing all that, et cetera, will be great. But we don't need to have a huge role in it. It truly is turnkey. It's how much we want to put in extra.
Okay, so if I'm a resident in Pinellas County, how do I know, right now, how do I know this program even exists?
If you were to go to our website, once we roll it all out, you will be able to see it on our website as an alternative for transportation. Your employer will also be most likely contacted, because what they do is they go out to a lot of employers and also community areas to say, hey, you know, we, through our rideshare programming, they've got software, can match you up with people to come to work.
And this is an agreement, is this the agreement between FDOT and PSTA?
Yes, sir.
And I had mentioned enterprise, but you're talking about whoever that vendor is that's chosen.
Right.
Who chooses that vendor? Is that an FDOT, or is that a PSTA, a partnership? What's that look
The
like?
finance committee, of course.
No,
You.
it's ours?
Mr. Motivated Burns will do the procurement, and then it'll come to this committee for you to select the winner.
Nice.
And the net revenues that will be gained by this, we control the spending, but does the spending have to stay in the Vanpool family, or does that become general operating funds?
Good question. And what happens is, in this particular case, let me just go back one slide. In this particular case, about the $300,000 difference can go towards additional, towards grant funding. I think it was Commissioner Peters asked me a question the last time I presented this as an information item, can this be used for operating? My knee-jerk reaction was no, because federal funds are generally used for capital items. I went back and re-looked at everything, and I am able to use a small piece of this to help fund our legal expenses as it relates to any federal procurements and federal items. So that'll help us on the operating side.
Because I noticed in, the logo on it is ride share. Is that just an example? And I don't know what, I'm on page 3.
Yeah, the Commute Tampa Bay, the ride share is the logo for Enterprise, but the Commute Tampa Bay is the actual program.
Okay. And is there any way that the PSTA logo can be implemented in that marketing program? Do we have any say in that at all?
I would think we would, just like we do with First Transit.
It's a very good question, and when FDOT approached us, our marketing department had the same questions. I think you asked how is the program, or how would a citizen know about the program? As Debbie said, almost all the marketing of the Vanpool program by T. Barta over the years has been through the employers. If you work for a company and you have at lunch, there'll be a table with Enterprise Rent-A-Car Company people sitting there with that logo, that rideshare logo, and then to give you information and try to get people to sign up for van, to log into the database, and then they connect you with a van that's leaving near your house to get there. So it's pretty much just been, so far, for the 200 vans that are operating today, for major employers in the area. And something like 90% of all of the vans go to MacDill Air Force Base or Bay Pines, because those are the two federal employee, large federal employers in the Tampa Bay region. And as Debbie said, it's because for federal employees, they get a transit voucher every month that basically makes riding the van for free. They get a free commute. So it's pretty easy pickings, and it seems like, as Debbie says, we wouldn't have to do anything. And the program would just kind of operate on autopilot, like it has been. As Debbie said, there would be a goal, since PSTA is high achieving, that we would like to grow it. We would like to see if we could expand it beyond just MacDill and Bay Pines to other employers. And so FDOT has told me that they will provide us with grants marketing grants to try to branch out to other markets. But as Debbie said, it's still no cost to PSDA. It's only a net positive revenue.
And this is to start in December?
We would, the current contract expires at the end of December. So we would want to have a vendor in place, bringing this to the November committees for the December board. You know, I think Al and I have heard from various conversations, oh, it'll be Enterprise. Well, you know how we're good at, Val's been reaching out everywhere, so we don't know who it is going to be, and that's the way we run our procurements, and I think we can get some competition on it. So we do want to ensure a smooth transition should it go to a different vendor.
It's a win-win.
It is. And so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Connie.
3C, on-demand provider care contract limit increase. The limit increase for the privatized on-demand PSTA access providers. Bonnie will take us through this item.
Hi, good morning, Finance Committee. I'm Bonnie Epstein. I'm the Director of Mobility Services. And yes, I'm here to request a contract limit increase of $12 million for our on-demand service contractors. So when I say on-demand service contractors, I'm talking about the contractors that cover our on-demand services. So these are basically, they're not the van pool, but everything outside of our traditional fixed route. So it's our first last mile direct connect program, the second and third shift program for low-income workers, TD late shift. We also have the TD Tampa Bay service that provides cross-county rides, the Healthy Hop program that operates in Tarpon Springs. It included our essential workers program that we had operating during the pandemic, and of course our mobility on demand program that provides on-demand trips to our access riders. So we procured these contracts back in 2020. The formal RFP was put together in the spring of 2020, but a few of these programs had been operating since 2016 as pilots. So the Direct Connect program, TD Late Shift, but Al Burns and Debbie did convince me to put out a formal RFP so we'd have a procurement for these contractors. Put that together pre-COVID of 2020, and the contracts were awarded in June of 2020. So the board approved a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options for Uber, Lyft with a subcontractor of wheelchair transport, and Bay Area Metro for a total amount not to exceed $12.1 million. So these contracts, again, even with all the option years, are set to expire June 23rd of 2025. And I want to be clear that my ask is not to increase our budget. These programs are budgeted in our next fiscal year and continuing on. We're not issuing any purchase orders or anything. The ask today is only to increase the contract value so that we can continue to operate our on-demand programs, again, all of which have been budgeted in the mobility department. So I wanted to go into a little bit of detail on why we need the contract limit increase at this time. So one of the reasons is we've added additional programs since we started these contracts. We put that RFP together pre-COVID. One of them is our Essential Workers program. The other is the TD Tampa Bay service. I wanted to really call out the TD Tampa Bay program because it is newer, and the services that are provided there cross-county, the cost per trip is higher, but this program is covered by CTD grant. So we're getting grant funds for 90% of the operating costs for that program. So again, it's not that we need more money. The money is there. We just need the contract limit increase. Another reason that we've seen that we're asking for the increase today is that the cost per trip, definitely like many things pre-COVID, we've seen costs increase due to inflation. So back pre-COVID, when we were putting together our estimates, the average cost per trip for an MOD trip, which is one of the bigger programs under these contractors was just over $12. We've seen a lot of changes, throughout COVID with supply and demand, the cost per trip fluctuating. We're not seeing those big fluctuations up and down like we did throughout COVID, but this summer we're seeing cost per trip averaging just over $16. Probably the biggest reason, though, that we're needing the contract limit increase is because we've seen ridership increase on the on-demand programs. So that includes increases on Direct Connect, the TD Late Shift service, starting the TD Tampa Bay program, so all that ridership. But the biggest increase is on the Mobility On-Demand service, that on-demand service for paratransit riders. And what we've really seen there, though, is a shift in ridership. I know we've talked about this before, from our traditional pre-scheduled paratransit service onto the Mobility On-Demand program. Although the ridership has increased some for the services that we provide for our paratransit riders, it's not this huge explosive growth on MOD. It really is that ridership moving over. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that. One is for the customer. The customer does get to choose which service they take when they use paratransit, whether it's pre-scheduled or on demand. And we've heard so many good things about the life-changing experience riders have with being able to take their trips on demand. The other reason is that the cost per trip that we pay for, on average, for the paratransit service, I checked yesterday, July, it was just over $51. And compared to that $16, it's over 3 times as much per trip. So we're paying a lower cost per trip when the trips do move over from pre-scheduled to on-demand. So I'd like to go into a little bit of detail also on where that $12 million number came from. So the budgeted request that we have for all of these programs for the fiscal year 2024 is that $6.2 million number. So that'll take us from October 1st through the end of September 2024. And then looking ahead to FY25, looking at how much the costs have increased or how much we've spent on these programs over the past few fiscal years. Since we have seen some growth, I'm estimating a 20% increase in the total amount that we need from fiscal year 24 to 25. And that's due to the ridership increases and the cost per trip I spoke about in the last slide. So for all of FY25, right now estimating needing $7.5 million for all of those on-demand programs. But since we're only needing the contract, or to cover the life of the contract, which again goes through June 23rd, 2025, we only need the first 9 months of fiscal year 25. So again, taking that entire fiscal year 24 number of 6.2, adding it to the first 9 months that we need for fiscal year 25, that 5.6 number, I get the 11.9 million, rounding just up a little bit to the even $12 million ask, which will lead to our recommendation, which is to approve an increase to the contract values, again, for our on-demand providers of Lyft, Uber, Bay Area Metro, for a total amount not to exceed that $12 million. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, Bonnie, can you go back a slide, please?
Sure.
Thank you for the work that you did on trying to identify the costs and the projections on those. How does PSTA get any revenue from these sources?
So we do get grant funding for some of the programs that operate under these contracts. So all the ones that I mentioned, Direct Connect, TD Late Shift. So TD Late Shift is a grant-funded program. 90% of the costs are covered with the TD Late Shift grant. The same thing with TD Tampa Bay. Mobility on Demand, a lot of the costs are just coming local operating dollars, but some of the providers are covered with a grant that has I think it's a 50-50 split. But we do get some grant funding because those trips are on demand. They qualify for an on-demand grant.
Thank you. I will, yes.
Excuse me, forgive my voice, it will fluctuate up and down, up and down. My concern is the cost for the service that we have to provide by the ADA, which is the paratransit, costs. I got some numbers from Brad, and, you showed 51, I think it was like $51.
Yeah.
6 cents per trip, which is high. And, I'm just wondering why their costs are so high.
Yeah,
I mean, why?
So when I'm looking at the numbers, calculating this number, the costs per trip are high pretty much due to our dedicated provider, TransDev. Those costs, the fixed costs that we pay them every month is pretty substantial. You know, as well as all the trips that they're doing for the wheelchair service. They also do some ambulatory. The cost per trip for that provider is a lot higher. The number is actually brought down by the trips done by USERV and Bay Area Metro. So this was looking at, you know, balancing out ridership on each of the services that we have, or the contractors that we have for the pre-scheduled service.
Because typically the paratransit costs for any agency are much higher than fixed route.
Right.
And I believe, Debbie, you could correct me on this if I'm incorrect, but that the paratransit trips that PSTA does is roughly right around 4% of what the fixed route is, right around 8 million a year. Is that correct? Something in that?
Or ridership or?
Yeah, ridership, just ridership on fixed route is like
I would
about
have
8
to-
million a year, right?
I mean, roughly, I believe ridership is around 10 million on the fixed route and about 300 and some thousand on paratransit.
Okay, yeah, so then it's like a very small percentage of the total ridership that PSC does, but the costs are like astronomical because it has to be, the way it's being operated right now, it's one person and one vehicle going, you know, to the pickup point to the destination, which is expensive. And what I think is more efficient, and I think Greg wasn't, he has experience with HART, that there could be more multi-loading, especially on the ambulatory part of it. And I believe that First Transit does have some cutaway vehicles that can carry more than one person, and that cuts down costs, you know. But the cost that I got anyway, I'm just totally concerned that it's so expensive for TransDev to operate. And I just, you know, I think, Brad, you had it $81 here. Cost per trip, for example, in July was $78.24 per wheelchair trip. And the ambulatory also was, it shows here $78.24. And that's high. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I expected you to ask that same question. So I started looking at some of our comparison data from our benchmarking group. And I hope to put that together and show you. I mean, it's high, but it's comparable. It's comparable to the rest of the industry. Those numbers that you just cited.
Right.
You're exactly right. The paratransit cost has been escalating
And I think
substantially.
it's not, no, I want you to finish it.
And so I hope to show you, compared to other cities, that those numbers, the TransDev costs that we, and again, they were the lowest bidder in 2020 when the PSA board voted on their contract. They were the lowest cost option out there. They're substantially more than the old bankrupt provider that you know. But
What I'm just afraid of is that we keep adding and adding and adding to this, and the costs are, especially when we're considering cutting fixed route, which I'm totally opposed to. I just wish there's some way that we could bring these costs down to the the service that we're required to provide by the FTA, which is the Transdev service. So I just wish there's ways that we, you know, we could do it. I know I asked for some data yesterday on on-time performance and so on and so forth. It was pretty horrible yesterday. There were a lot of late trips on the ADA provided service. I think they ran at about an 82%, when we're really required to do 95% on time. So I just, you know, I know I go over this over and over again. I just want to try to bring costs down as all it
Yeah.
goes down. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, yes?
So, I'm looking at the financials that we're gonna be talking about in our next section, but, I think it's apropos to this, because I'm not sure what, I'm hoping to get an explanation. So, under the purchase transportation, the MOD expense is down 22% year-to-date from budget. We're $1.1 million less, of an expense to budget. How does that fit with what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so that's looking at our FY '23 budget, correct? Yeah, I mean, may ask Debbie for some details, but what I can say for that one is, for the TD Tampa Bay service, we had asked for a lot of funding, and we haven't seen that many trips yet for our grant ask for next year, or this current state fiscal year, and what we have projected for next fiscal year is more in line with the ridership that we're actually seeing. Another is we have seen some cost savings on the projections that I had for the traditional paratransit service lines, not these mobility on demand lines.
Okay.
We also have a couple staff vacancies. I'm not sure how much that's contributing to it.
I would hope that that's not contributing
Yeah, that
greatly
much.
to the $1.1 million difference. Okay, so,
The savings in fiscal year '23 is just compared to our conservative budget estimate that was somewhat, especially skewed by the grant, the
Yeah.
new program going to Tampa that we overestimated. That's why there's savings there.
okay, I was just trying to put those two ideas of needing more money but spending less money at the same time together.
So I have one thing. So everything's going up. I mean, gas is up, expenses are up, and Commissioner Cox, you know, everything's going up. What are we gonna do? So Brad, I guess I have one question. You sure this is a program that we need and we have the funding for it?
Oh, yes, yes.
Absolutely. All right.
Absolutely. I mean, and again.
And are we required to do?
PSEA is required to provide what's called complimentary paratransit. And forever, we have been doing that. We've been meeting, since the ADA was passed in 1982, all transit systems, if you take federal grants, you have to provide a complimentary paratransit. So PSEA has done that. Recently, starting in 2020, and a pilot before that, PSTA provided an additional program called Mobility on Demand. It's still the same customers that are qualify as having a disability. As Commissioner Cox says, technically, we're not required to provide that. We could not do this. But as Bonnie's graph shows, this is our way of reducing the cost on the traditional paratransit to bring the cost down to a lower cost per ride trip on an Uber or Lyft at $16 a ride instead of $51 a ride is saving us so much money to provide the number of trips we provide. That is our challenge. That is our solution, and the customers love it. The customers love the on-demand rides. So the answer to your question is no, we're not obligated to do this, but the customers love it, and it's saving us money on the program that we have to provide.
I do remember in 2020, when I first got on the finance committee, we talked about this, and I was a little confused, but it seems to be a very successful program. So, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve. Oh, sure.
Well, you can go through that if you Right, since Greg's in the room, I'd just like to ask Greg, a question. Based on your experience, that's all right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With HART in their fair transit program, I understand they use cutaways, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And they do multi-load on those, I'm certain that they multi-load and plan around that way too. And that's my point with our ADA, provider transit, that they have that ability to do the multi-loading, but they don't have the ability to control the route, meaning it's very difficult with, they don't control the dispatch of the ride. The bottom line, it goes to our software provider, and they could be at one spot, and there might be 5 people there to go, but then it's controlled by Spare Labs, and they just send separate vehicles, and that's why their costs, as I understand, are so high. And then costs are reduced when you have a vehicle that has 12 seats on it and could put 3 or 4 people, and you just route it out that way. That's,
And there is time restrictions involved too, that you can't get large groups because of the requirements to get them delivered there.
that's exactly.
So, theoretically, it'd be nice to get 5 to 8 people on there, but logistically, you just can't do it and get the people around, so, and then we did not, when I was at Hart, did not have mobility on demand. We were strictly the ADA
Right.
provider only, so
Well,
we
at
didn't have
least
any
you-
place to disperse everybody else. Everybody had to ride.
I understand. And at least if you could do 3 instead of 1, it's a super cost saving. I observed that when I was in Austin, that they would have a cutaway, and it was like at a library, and they picked up, 3 people, 2 were vision impaired, and it just makes it much more efficient. But that's really all I have to say on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm opposed.
And so that motion passes with 1 opposition. 1 no vote. All right, so fantastic. Thank you, Bonnie, very much. And we will move on to the monthly financial report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I can always breathe once I take the mask off again.
I'm moving the donut away from her.
She doesn't trust me. She doesn't trust me. I'm Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting. You've got July's financials in front of you. So for the month of July, our net deficit was $6.9 million, which was $175,000 favorable to the budgeted deficit. Revenue is $258,000 unfavorable to budget due to the state grants. Expenses, though, are favorable to budget by $433,000 with unfavorable variances in fringe benefits, supplies, and insurance expense. On the year-to-date July, we finished with a net surplus of $20 million, which is $2.8 million favorable to the budgeted surplus. Revenue is $879,000 unfavorable to budget, driven by federal grants being unfavorable, but helped by the increased interest income and our state grants. Expenses are $3.7 million favorable to budget and reflect that in most areas, with a noticeable exception in the supplies expense and the insurance expense, and that's been pretty continuous throughout the year. So I'm happy to take any questions you can have.
Yes, sir.
Can you remind us what's included in the auxiliary revenue?
Yes, that is. Hang on, I looked that up this morning.
That includes, while she's looking up.
Thank you.
That includes things like advertising revenue.
Yes, that was it.
Is the primary one that is in there. Sometimes it also includes things like disposal of assets. That also.
So is, in that case, is the advertising revenue down or just mistimed based on this month?
We are going through the GASB 87 implementations. that were required for fiscal year '22 this year. And in doing that, we've got some advertising revenue that we've had to move from one spot that rolled up to auxiliary revenue into another in non-transportation revenue. And that's just working with the consultant on the proper accounting for the GASB-related advertising revenue. So you kind of see it on the first two lines, the movements, the being under 284 and being over 284. And that's just us getting to the end of fiscal year '23 with the proper accounting for the new GASB 87 implementation.
Which has to do with leases. So it's
Yes.
basically advertising is leasing space on our buses.
Right.
Okay, so you also said that the auxiliary revenue was moved to the non-transportation revenue.
The piece of, not all of it, but advertising revenue rolls up under auxiliary, and there is a piece of that that has to do with the new GASB, with the lease implementation, that has moved into the category under non-transportation revenue.
Yeah, I will say that the advertising revenue, we generally budget based on our guaranteed minimums for the contracts. And we've reached that point in the year where we're starting to go over that. So advertising is actually doing quite well itself. Craziness with GASB 87, wait till we get to 96, just shoot me. You know, you're gonna be seeing some, I'll call it non-cash transactions that flow through. So we'll have to take, I think, a better look at where we're budgeting for those, so we can reallocate it in fiscal '24, so we don't have questions.
Okay, yeah, because when you were describing it, you were describing the line, item 1 and 2 as a kind of a wash, 284 out, 284 in, but on that line, it also says it's due to increased interest income.
Yeah.
So how much of that is, so now I'm wondering, well, how much of that is increased interest income, and how it's switching transfers between accounts?
The interest income, I believe, was 200 for the month.
Okay.
And on a year, do you have it on the year?
The year-to-date, I do not have it in front of me. But for the month of July, I think it was right at 200,000, give or take a little bit, so.
Okay.
When I'm sorry, just one more comment on that. When the budget was done for fiscal year '23, we had no idea what the effects of GASB 87 were. And even in the beginning of the year, we had not gone through all of the calculations. That was really the March through May time period. So there really wasn't an opportunity to the budget was what the budget was at that point, and we know more going into this year about the effects of GASB 87, or at least we really will know more by the end of September.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the timing issue when it comes to
Yes.
revenues. But from my perspective, at least, I won't speak for anybody else. I'm trying to look at these numbers and understand how we're operating, how the health of our organization is. And when you have, so there's nothing in here that like indicates that it is just it's an accounting change, or as we did with the tax revenues, it's a timing issue. It's not, there's nothing wrong. It is just how it appears on paper. So what would be helpful is if there are larger accounting changes is to kind of break that out, so we can see what is left as far as actually being really true to our operations.
Yes, and I understand that.
Footnote.
That's always in the footnotes. No one reads them, that's the problem.
Any other questions? Julie, thank you very much. And we are moving on. Am I correct in my notes, right? We don't have a ridership report or anything this morning?
Sadly, we do not yet. We're working on it.
Well, then we are on to any other business. Seeing no other business, I will certainly move for adjournment.
I have
Oh, wait, we will back it up, whoa, okay.
I just want to say today's Commissioner Bennett's last Finance Committee meeting as a member of the board, so I just wanted to say thank you for.
I second that.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
That is all.
No, I have none.
No, is that it? All right. Move to adjourn? Do I have a second? All right. All those opposed? In the White House. All right. Thank you all. We are done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to stick around for planning committee. We don't have anybody showing up.
I am going to stick with you. I will do.
I only coughed once.
I think I coughed like 5 times.